Welcome to the Ordinals Podcast, produced by Ord Media, featuring the top builders, projects, and investors pioneering Bitcoin inscription protocols and the future of digital artifacts.
Welcome, everyone, to the Ordinals Podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar Lifthrasir. Today, we're going to talk about futuristic and present art. We've got a great artist with us today, Far, F-A-R. He describes himself as an artist and engineer whose research interests lie at the intersection of visual arts and technology with a focus on cultural techniques. Probably a lot of people know him for Taproot Wizards. He's the kind of main artist there, but he does a lot of other really cool stuff with recursive inscriptions. His Umwelt collection is a weird one, which I like, and many other things. He's also a PhD in visual studies at Harvard. So Far, welcome to the Ordinals Podcast.
Ragnar, thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to chat with you. I mean, you had like a very interesting conversations already that I hear with other peers from the Ordinals community. So yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, so glad to have you. When I first came across your work, it was through the Taproot Wizards, and I thought, well, who's doing the work? Taproot Wizards, pretty basic, right? It's just using MS Paint. Is it just Udi's, younger brother just using MS Paint to get these basic things across? And then I found obviously that you're kind of the artist there. And then I started to look into your work, and you're actually it looks like a very accomplished, dynamic artist, and so that was kind of neat to see that Taproot Wizards had someone of your caliber. So if you could just give us kind of your brief summary of your work, what you've done and what you're doing now, before we dive into the details.
Yeah, so you explained it well. I'm an artist. I come to art via engineering. I have actually a civil engineering degree and architecture. I have both. But when I was doing those degrees, I was very interested in the visual representation. And then that was at the beginning in civil engineering. I studied civil engineering in a very conservative or like old school university, but then I studied architecture using the computer as an oracle to give us like shapes and forms. So in general, so I got first of all, like at the beginning in civil engineering, I was very interested in drawing and solving mathematical problems with geometry, the graphical representation, and then in architecture school, I was fascinated by 3D software, and so when I finished architecture school, I did everyone was kind of like, all right, dude, you're not you're not an architect, you're an artist, like obviously, like you're making art. And so then I shortly worked as an architect. I was designing stadiums, and then I had like an art practice on the side. So that lasted not that long. So and then I went full time as an artist. And so this is my practice. It's just like a very technical. I deep dive into the technology and into algorithms, hardware, into the history of it, and then my artwork kind of like come out with all of these. Originally, what I say is like I demystify these technical processes. So yeah, I think that's the intersection of art and technology on visual culture. Like literally, this is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting that you come from civil engineering and then architecture, because that's very rare. When we think of art, we don't think of terms of mathematics. It's usually, very creative, although math is creative in its own way. So I think it's significant that with, ordinals and inscriptions, which is technology at the end of the day. It's software, it's technology, it's a protocol. So it's always sort of a weird thing to me to bring in art into technology, but that's exactly what you're doing, and you have the background to do that and to think about in terms of geometry, numbers, software. And so we'll get into that in terms of your Umwelt collection and some of the AI stuff. But let's start off on kind of a more maybe lighthearted, maybe something easier for people to understand, which is the Taproot Wizards. So Taproot Wizards is, I think, a pretty well-known kind of collection in Ordinal Inscriptions. It really is one of the most Bitcoin-centric collections, I would say, that really ties to Bitcoin rather than its art that is, on Bitcoin. So tell us, how did you first get connected to Udi and to the Taproot Wizards? How did you guys kind of get to know each other, or how did that work?
So yeah, this is kind of like an interesting story because it's gonna be pretty soon. It's gonna be 1 year since I first spoke with Udi and then with Eric. So in 2017, I was at Harvard and I was at the graduate school of design, and I was already in crypto, so I was pretty interested to meet other. My relationship with crypto is like everybody else. It was mostly on Twitter and Reddit, and with avatars, like you don't know, like you know who is the other person. But when I was over there, I created a group, a Harvard group in the design school. So we met weekly. Very interesting people. It's a very small group. It was designers interested in crypto. It was a very, very, very cool people, actually. And then one day I kind of merged. I contacted with the law school and the business school. They have also like a different blockchain groups, and I organized like a kind of like a meetup. And so Dennis Porto came to that meeting. And then since then we have been friends back and forth. So Dennis, I think Udi and Dennis. I think Udi asked Dennis. They didn't meet in person, but they asked Dennis if he knew an artist or something. And then Dennis told me like, are you interested in anything, any of this, like doing something on Bitcoin? I was like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. Like, I'll talk to Udi, definitely. And so yeah, I met with Udi and we spoke. Basically, we had an intro about basically how we came to crypto and all of that, and then I was pretty aligned with what he wanted to do. Because when it came to crypto around 2014, I was like definitely it was a different time than now. But Bitcoin had like it had the culture of Bitcoin. I wasn't aligned with it, and I was fascinated by other things, and and then the years passed by, like 2016 and 17, and then kind of like the culture was just like very, very narrow down. Like now, like we can talk about laser eyes. So I wasn't like aligned with that, but I always liked Bitcoin. It's such a cool asset, right? So when Udi told me like, look, we want to create something. We didn't have Ordinals back then, so we were talking about like we want to do something. I mean, he told me like, the Bitcoin Wizard. I was like, yeah, of course I know the Bitcoin Wizard. That's super cool. That's something I really like about, this is part of my PhD also. Like I studied memes and the history of the visual culture, and the wizard was, of course, like, when I got into crypto, it was kind of like already like a very, very important visual artifact. So he said like, yeah, we want to do something with it and create culture around it and community around it. And I was like, yeah, I'm down to do it. I'm down to do whatever it is. We had no idea how to do it, to be honest. Like we were like, okay, let's meet. So we were like, literally, we were talking we spent hours, like meeting with all of us, talking about what we can do, how we can maybe like we wanted to drive attention to Bitcoin. Because a lot of people, new folks, came to the space via NFTs, and they mostly came to Ethereum or other chains like Solana, and they totally dismiss Bitcoin, like because Bitcoin what can you do? What could you do over there? Like in theory, like just payment. So it was an interesting challenge, and this is how we started. And this is it's gonna be a year ago for me, like almost, yeah.
Yeah, a year. Yeah, people may not know that when Udi and Eric started to think about the Wizards, that it wasn't on Ordinals, it didn't happen yet. And I think the idea was to do it on Ethereum, if I'm correct, because that's just obviously the main place for NFTs. And so in a way, it's sad that it was going to have to be on Ethereum because you couldn't do it on Bitcoin. And this is also, I don't know if you know Satoshables, but it was another Bitcoin centric collection that was first on Ethereum. So now he's brought it over to Bitcoin to Stacks. And so that's so great to hear that you guys started out as a Bitcoin project, but couldn't use Bitcoin. And then obviously Ordinals hit. So by the time that Ordinals came about, how far along were you guys?
So yeah, what you said, we were thinking a lot about Lightning. We're thinking in many ways of how to do it. Like maybe it's a Lightning. You use Lightning, and then you get one of these collectibles. It's not like we're thinking Ethereum or anything like that. We're just just figure out how to bring attention to it. So Ordinals came out. Casey, they were working since also basically in parallel, right, to us. But I wasn't aware until later. So Dennis he was preparing this his article that became kind of like a very, very popular and after he published it, the article about Ordinals, everything kind of took off, right? So Dennis told me I have his message saying it's your time to shine, check this out. So he sent me a draft, and I was like, yeah, check it out later, but then I was like, oh, I need to check this right now. And then I was like, wait, what? This is cool as hell, right? And yeah, I was I remember one day, I was just after reading this, I was this is so cool. I love it. So I got this, we have a group where we're chatting about the wizards, and I was guys, I think we need to do this. And this was very, very early. And then it was kind of right after things started to get noticeable, right? And then we rapidly got a bunch of people we contact Luxor, and we started to do the 4 megabyte. It was insane how fast we got together to do that. But yeah.
So did you guys have any artwork done? Okay. Did you guys have any actual artwork done before Ordinals got started, or did you do that?
Yeah. I actually we had a draft for the collection. In fact, we were talking for months, and for me it was kind of a challenge project because, well, first of all, I really I always thought that PFPs were very interesting, but I never got to do any, just because I didn't have the reason for. But then when Udi contacted me, I was yes, I'm very excited about it, because also it's based on this artifact that is super cool. So yeah, it's kind of a low effort, but also there's a meme which is a pixelated stuff like that. So yeah, I started to do what could be, how this collection could look like. We had no idea about supply or whatever. So, but I already had some of the trades already done. So I could say we had the 0.1 version of it, but then we redid it entirely. I think there is only a few things that they remain from this first iteration of the collection.
So you redid it, came up with new designs, and what's sort of the base? There's different traits. So how did you? What are the traits, and how did you choose those?
So this is like a collective effort, I mean, I was materializing everything, like I'm doing the drawing and creating the artwork, but we had like a conversation about we the idea was that now that you have a PFP have like a lore built on top, like the PFPs are launched and then they create like this story around them. So for us, we're like Bitcoin is already over 10 years out. So the lore of this PFP is the history of Bitcoin. So we used, we had Eric and Nick Carter was helping out a little bit. So we're trying to find like cool things from the history of Bitcoin and then synthesize them as traits, right? So this is examples like the Frappuccino. We have the volcanoes, and we have the funny the Dorsey jersey, etc., etc. All of them are, and then some other are like calling. We even have like the nouns glasses, right? Because we are like looking at, it's part of the history, right? Like the NFTs on Ethereum, part of that, right? So there is traits that happen over there because CryptoPunks and then the nouns, for instance. So we had like a 3D glasses and stuff like that. So we were very careful about what type of traits to do, but it was always is built on top of that, like the Bitcoin lore and the crypto lore, I would say.
Yeah, and that's what's so fun, I think, about Bitcoin inscriptions and art is there's so much to draw from in terms of cultural means and then events and even like drama and arguments and breakthroughs, that it really is a rich history that is harder to do. Ethereum is kind of sort of technically the second oldest chain that's been, widely adopted. There's chains that came long before Ethereum, obviously, but Ethereum effectively is the next oldest chain that has adoption. But still, Bitcoin has a big, has been around a lot longer, and just more has happened. So it was nice to see a lot of that captured. And I love the Wizards because I remember when that came out, when that discussion first came out, and the Reddit thread, and like you said, that the culture had kind of gone a different way from a lot of people. So I really like that you guys captured that. And it was a lot of fun. So in terms of like technology though, talk to us about why the giant megabyte inscription. Why did you guys do that? Was it just to get some attention, or was there a good technical reason why you wanted to also do that?
Yeah, I think we were like what can we do that is just like get attention, but also what is impossible to do kind of thing. I think it's a mix of everything. So this is the history of the project too. Like we sit together, we start to think about like crazy things, and then we're like, this is too crazy, and then Udi is like, maybe it's not that crazy. I was like, okay, maybe this is again so insane, but this is how this 4 megabyte comes, and other things that we're working on. Everything looks like insane, but then maybe it's not that insane. But yeah, I think this is how the 4 megabytes came. But the Nick from Luxor, we were like, this is not how which miner is gonna do that. This is kind of like insane. But Nick was like, yeah, I'll do it. This is like let's see.
Yeah.
But it was like, we didn't know like if this was going to happen or not. We had like a moment of tension over there. Yeah, it was kind of like a big deal, but it was very interesting. But it happened, and now there is like how many of those? There is like 3 or 4, right? 4 megabytes.
Yeah, I think there's a few, but you guys were obviously first. And when you guys did that, to me, it really opened my eyes to the importance of miners, because miners in some sense are sort of not thought of that often. They're just kind of, the machines behind it, but there's not much to it. A lot of people think you pay your fee and that's sort of it. But to me, that really made me aware of just how important, mining is. And it goes back to block space. That was, I think, the other guys you proved is the block space being a constraint is actually a good thing. And you wanted to see how far you can go. So I think that was a smart move on your guys' part. And one other thing I wanted to ask you about that was Maven Spot. So Maven Spot is kind of the name for the guy who originally made that meme, with MS Paint famously. How much was he involved in this process since you got started?
So, well, he did the meme. Actually, there is we did a spaces. No, Udi did a spaces with him. When was this? This was like a very early on.
February, maybe?
February, yeah. And then it turned out he didn't use MS Paint. He didn't Photoshop. I was like, dude, that's such a disappointment.
Yeah, Photoshop, not MS Paint. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he did he did his meme. We spoke with him. Udi was talking to him about that everything. Basically, he was cool with us doing this. So we got his blessing. But yeah, very much we have been honoring this, bringing this, right. So this is what I like about this project, because it's based on, it's kind of like a derivative of an historical asset. But yeah, Maven, basically he was cool. He liked it. He did these spaces with Udi, and then basically we're on our own. But I look closely to it. So you see try to be making this. Obviously a reference into it, but there is a progression in the wizard. Actually, the Taproot Wizards, they're kind of like an evolution. The first ones are very different than the last ones.
Have you guys shared any early versions? Have you guys shared any of those?
Well, no. But the first one, the first one is actually the first one. Taproot Wizards is at number 0, right? The 4 megabytes it has a lot from the early ones, actually, most of it, yeah. And then the other honoraries are kind of starting to shape the new ones, and then it comes the new collection, and then there is the other honoraries that we are still doing, but they are a little bit different. So, which is some people ask all the time, so who did what? It's no, it's all us. But there's a progression in the aesthetics, which is also speaks about. This is totally intentional, because it speaks about openly, thinking about the original meme and how we are morphing into it. But everything is stored on chain, so we cannot change the whole collection. It's gonna be like that, and I think it's pretty cool, because it's kind of we have been it's gonna be a year doing this, and then when you look at the collection that only has 2100, and then it's so different. That's pretty interesting to see it, because this is the nature of this on-chain stuff. It's immutable. So this is we have been sharing openly how the design process is been evolving.
Yeah, I noticed that it's 2121. That's how many. So 2,121, right? Obviously, as a nod to the 21 million, Bitcoin limit, which I'm glad you guys did it that way. And in the collection, are you guys, when you think, are there specific people in mind when you're designing these? I've seen it. It looks like a few people that I know, or is it not anything to do with specific people and how they look, or is it all just cultural references? And then, of course, what colors look good and things like that, just art reasons, aesthetic reasons.
For in the bulk collection, no. This is just trades. It's not thinking about anyone in question. There is obviously there is references to some of the trades, right? This T-shirt that maybe is the one that Jack Dorsey wore in Bitcoin Miami. But then there's some stuff like that. But it's all a reference, and not directly to one person or something.
I see. So what's your process? Is it traditionally you have different layers, and then what's your creative process? Because we know the original meme, but then how do you expand from that in terms of traits, colors, aesthetics? What's your process there for that?
So Well, the process is get the original meme and kind of like identify the most, or set up like the most important gestures in it. So it could be like the robe and then the eyes and the face and maybe the beard. So kind of like divide this and then dive into the backgrounds, how to do it. So some of the stuff is like you want to. That's something that might be kind of like a challenging. We wanted to make it like a low. It has to like a low, low res, kind of like I'm doing it with the mouse. and but then it has to has like this like a compression a little bit that it feels like it's a meme. When a meme's like is sent over time like many times, like sometimes a screenshot it like they are sending kind of like a loose quality, and so we had that in mind. And also, well, here's the other deal, right? Like you're doing inscriptions, like back then. Now everyone have like this in mind, the economy of making a collection, right? Like like how much it costs, whatever. But back then we didn't have that. We're like, okay, so we have all of these, the 2000. They are like each one are like a 1 megabyte or 500 kilobytes. How much it costs? And then we're like, okay, we need to reduce all of this. Like it kind be like we have to do like 50 kilobytes each. So this is very interesting, right? Because then I got into writing a code, compressing them into WebPs and choosing which ones, because the WebP compression, it varies depending on if it is a flat color, if it is like a kind of like a gradient and stuff like that. So, or there is too many things. If it is like a very busy, like you cannot compress that much. Otherwise, it's gonna be like a very pixelated. So we had to divide them in complexity and apply different algorithms, compression algorithms. It was a very interesting process actually. This is something that people might not see, but we really spend like a long time doing this, and then at the end like we spent like $60,000 or something like that. But this was like 2 sats was the price. Like right now, I don't know what it is right now in the mempool, maybe like a 7 or something like that. But when the BRC20s, like it came like a few months ago, it was like the mempool went up like 700 or something like that.
Yeah. I think 3 figures. Yeah, I didn't know that it took that much work in terms of like the layering and being able to get the right traits, because like you said, some things might actually cause a large file size. And I didn't know that it took some engineering, some sounds like some testing, some seeing what worked and what didn't work, and then with those layers. So it actually sounds like a lot of work. It wasn't just a simple, we have glasses, we have a beard, whatever the 5 traits are, and then it was just a quick kind of, you design that was done to go. That's a lot of work.
It was legit. Yeah, and if you look at the new one-to-ones, there is some of them, like you can see like the compression, the pixelation of when you compress is actually, the art is made that the compression, when you zoom in, it looks like it has like a different pixelation, stuff like that. Yeah, like if you go to, for instance, like a Dan Hell's wizard, like and you zoom in, like everything is so controlled, like how it's pixelated and etc. etc. No, we spend like well, now I have like a somewhat of a process developed, but there is there has been like a kind of like a let's say we had to develop like a technique that involves like how to use like a different colors and complexity and interesting pixelation, so everything is, so it's actually like I'm treating this as an artwork, so everything makes sense. Like even the way things are pixelated, it has a reason, So I think this is those subtleties. We're gonna find like the right medium to talk about this. Like we're thinking about how to speak about all of this, because I think it's pretty cool, especially for some people that appreciate all of this technical stuff. I think we should share this.
Yeah, you guys should definitely share, because that I think also makes it a unique collection. And especially since you guys were pretty early, now things have come a long way, obviously with recursive inscriptions and then other things. But I think I would love to hear, you guys maybe in a Twitter space or something, talk about that process. And in terms of all these layers and pixelations and getting all that right, was that all on you to figure that out? Or is there anyone else on the team that was kind of part of that?
Well, I was making the art, and then we are like the process is very like a group. We have a group. We talk about it. It's everything like a very we share a lot. So I mean, when I was with ChatGPT, like a coding, compressing, Udi was helping me out to do that too, and then we had like a Tristan. Was also helping Rindel, we here and there we ask, it's a group effort at the end of the day, because I think that's the beauty of it. I think the project, it's not like okay, this is a PFP that we did in a couple of days, and then this is it. This is very different. Like we spend a long time, like even like right now with the one-to-ones, it's like a weeks for each one.
Wow.
We kind of like a back and forth. It's very funny because at the end of the day, they look like so silly, right? But but we want to, it's intentional, everything. So we have like our committee, like how do you think about this? It's pretty cool. We should, we should share. Yeah, I was talking to Udi the other day about it. Like there is a lot of wizards that they never came out, and then we had them, and we should do something about it, because some of them are like very cool, like super cool, but it is what it is. Like not everything can be inscribed or part of the collection.
But yeah, I think that's what people would want to hear. Which ones didn't make it through? Why did you not do certain ones? Is it purely the file size was too big? Is it you decided it wasn't consistent with the rest of the collection? Whatever it might be, because that's half the story, is not what you guys did, but what you guys chose not to do. And also that's part of the artistic process, right? Is when you hit a barrier, when you hit a challenge, and then you have to be creative around that challenge. So I think that's also brought up some things you as an artist of having to figure out, maybe from just a pure technical level, but I'm sure there were aesthetic considerations as well. So yeah, if you guys ever talk about that, would love to hear. And then I wanted to ask you about, in terms of Bitcoin itself with its constraints. Generally, the file sizes have to be smaller. Generally, Bitcoin is more expensive, when you create the inscriptions versus something like, Ethereum less so, but other chains generally can be less expensive. So for you as the artist, how did those constraints with Bitcoin, inform what you could do or couldn't do, and how was it help you to be more creative, maybe in a way?
So I'm an artist that I like constraints a lot, and for me, I really like ordinals, like ordinal theory, and inscription. I love it a lot. Like I really like it because it's not that I'm saying also I don't like the other ones. Like I have done things in Solana. I think Solana is good for other things. It's very cheap, and to basically deploy the smart contracts, or which is like a pointers to IPFS or stuff like that. And if you want to do like interactive stuff, like you need to have like the users to interact a lot with where you're working. Maybe it's a good solution. And Ethereum as well. Ethereum is a fantastic blockchain. But if you want to put things on chain, I think Solana. I actually don't know if you can do this in Solana, like to put things on chain. I haven't tried. In Ethereum, yes, I have tried, and Ethereum is more costly actually to put things on chain at this magnitude, right? Like we're talking here, like which is like like when we're putting like a full JPEG or something like that on chain, this is insane, to think about it. Like, because if you in Ethereum you want to do that, just forget about it. You will spend. I mean, I don't know. There's several projects that have done it. Like a Van Armand, the AI artist, he put his an entire collection. I think they were like a small images. I think he tweeted about how much it costed, but maybe like a 20 or 30 ETH, something like that. But also like a cyber brokers. There's the PFP collection. They put all the collection on chain, and they were SVGs, and still I think they pay. I think it's like about 90 Ethereum, something like that. Back when Ethereum was like $3,000. So, this is pretty expensive, and Bitcoin is cheaper relatively with to that, right? So
it's amazing that compared to Ethereum, it's less expensive, but yet the storage is better. It's more immutable. So it's just one of those amazing things. And it goes back to the early days of Bitcoin, right? Because I think when Counterparty came out, part of the reason why we got these changes was people, certain people, we don't need to name names, really came out against having that bite size. And so I think it went from 80 to 40. I should have looked this up. I used to know. But either way, it was reduced. Because of that reason, people didn't want to put these things on chain. So ultimately, I think it helped Bitcoin scale better. And having, with Taproot, it's sort of like because people were so against art and non-financial transactions on Bitcoin that we got these constraints, which then eventually led to Taproot, which made it even better. So it wasn't intentional. It was just one of those kind of magical things about Bitcoin that just sort of happened. I mean, it is kind of interesting. And so we came full circle because part of why Vitalik started Ethereum was because he couldn't do certain things on Bitcoin because some of the core devs like Greg Maxwell and other influential voices, right, didn't want that. But it actually ended up working out better. So because of that, now Bitcoin is sort of probably one of the best places for art. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, the way I see it is that everyone has the right to have their own opinion, and for me, there is I would say I can be like a power user. This is how you call it in this technical in the tech enterprise or whatever. Like, I'm using blockchain all the time. As an artist, I think. I have some collections out there, and I would like to. If something happened to me or anything like that, I would like to have this forever, like in a blockchain. This is like to me, it's just beautiful, and so that worked for me. And like what I did the other day, my two collections, the Infinite AI and Infinite IRL, I inscribe everything, so now it's forever over there. So I don't have to lose sleep of saying like, oh man, like what about if the IPFS goes down or Amazon server with this goes down? But even to worry about like in 50 or 60 years or 100, now I'm like I'm sleeping. Yeah, I know this is gonna be there forever, which is like a very interesting. I mean, it's incredible, right? So I think it is. But also not, I had this conversation the other day with somebody. Not everything needs to be on chain forever. Like I'm very mindful about it. What do I put or not? I'm not like pressing the trigger every day, spamming the blockchain. I think about it. Also, it has a cost, which I think is good. I think it's good because then you think about twice what you put on chain. But yeah, I think it's the best for now. That doesn't mean that Ethereum is not good. I mean, of course, Ethereum is very good for all the things. But I think this process of, let's say, hypothetical case that you launch something on Ethereum, you have an artwork, you launch it on Ethereum, the artwork starts to get value. And then you, as an artist, and you say, or even the collector, they say, look, I think this has like a meaningful value. It makes sense that we put this on chain, right? Like the same that they did to CryptoPunks, for instance, right? CryptoPunks became on chains later on, or what Danny did with the on-chain monkeys. I think total, it's amazing that we have this resource right now, right? Like we can put it in Bitcoin, the most decentralized, secure network. It's incredible. I think people are underrating. I think people they haven't wrapped their head around this yet. That's my opinion about it. Like now we're in this phase that people think of ordinals about like, oh, this is a fad, or this is what many people tell me, like, is this like the new shiny object? It's like, look, I don't care about what you think about, like, in terms of speculative or not. Like, this actually is really good. It's cool as hell. Like, I can put this on chain, forget about it. It's gonna be there forever. I don't care about the other stuff. Like, this ordinal theory allows me to do this. Whatever people get it or not, like, I don't care in these terms, right? This is like a meaningful. It's a big deal in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's a big deal, and that's why I think that's Casey calls it, digital artifacts. He didn't call it NFTs. He gets mad when you call it NFTs, right? But he called it digital artifacts.
That's right. Digital artifacts is the best. It's great that he did that. They call them digital artifacts.
Yeah, and it's proof of work. Bitcoin is proof of work, and so if you want to put something meaningful, Bitcoin is the place to do it. If you want to pay, you got to pay for it. And so to me, when I look at different collections, I try to think to myself, like, does this need to be on Bitcoin? Because I'm pretty conservative when it comes to Bitcoin. I always have been, and skeptical of things, still open-minded. And so when I see a collection, I think, does this need to be on Bitcoin? Or I think, how does this have to do with Bitcoin culture? Or I think, how does this take, something unique about Bitcoin, maybe the protocol or history or something? And I try to look at it and see, and it doesn't have to be, it could be nothing to do with Bitcoin, but generally I'm a little more favorable to things like that. And then I want to switch a little bit to talking about recursive inscriptions, because you brought up this infinite AI, and I think that was on Ethereum. But could you tell people about that and what you've done with recursive inscriptions, if you have?
Yeah, so because a lot of my work I use to give background, I think something that I really like about NFTs, it was the network effects of it. So essentially, without NFTs, you work in an artwork, you work in a painting or something, you have this one artwork, and then you have one unit, and then you have one collector. And of course, you can do like prints, and you have the same print, many, copy many times. But I thought, like, with the blockchain and NFTs, you could do like a one piece, and with code, you can have like these variations. And then instead of one collector, you have like 500 of them. So it's a very interesting tokenizing the work. I thought like it was fantastic. Some people think like when Kobe say like, oh, all of this is altcoins with pictures. Some people take this as a big something negative, and I don't think it's negative. It's a positive. There is a lot. The network effects of crypto is very interesting. Tokenizing things, right? So yeah, I thought like it's essential for me. It was essential to do like this generative generative collections, and so I was like hoping that something would allow to do that in Bitcoin, right? So when recursive inscription, I mean, of course, I was following the development of this, talking to Danny a lot, and I was like, okay, I need to learn how to do this, and for so long, I had this collection that I made in Ethereum in 2021, the infinites, that I wanted to put on chain, but I couldn't. I couldn't because there's two components of this collection. They have like 200 or 190 images that are static images that I generated with AI. And then it has a very simple code in 3GS that is grabbing like these images randomly, and then the code applies another layer on top. So I could put the code is pretty simple. I could put that on chain on Ethereum, but the images I couldn't store them. So for 2 years, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I need to put them on chain. But then with recursive inscription, I was like, okay, this is it. So So yeah, I did. I started to, I had like a lot of conversation with Danny, and I used what they did. They inscribed already 3 years, and they did a compression method that is very interesting. So I used what their stack, and then now these collections are on chain. So when you go to OpenSea, for instance, when you check the Infinite AI or Infinite IRL, whatever you see over there is fetching from Ordinals, is fetching from Bitcoin. Because basically I substitute what you see over there is an iframe to the Ordinal. And it's very good because it works very fast. I think it's faster than IPFS Bitcoin. So, so I think it was pretty good. And now I'm working in more complex stuff. I think it's very interesting recursive inscription, like conceptually speaking, like the idea that you could reference anything that is on chain already is really good. It's just like imagine, right, what can be done in the future. In 10 years, like someone can fetch to some inscription that is like early on. It's pretty cool. I think it's fascinating. So for me, that I'm a person that my work always, or most of the time, reference past work that I've done in the past. It's very exciting because whatever I inscribe today or tomorrow, in 2-3 years or 4 years, I might come back and reference it. So it will be very interesting to see after 10 years or 20 years, all the mapping, right? How everything's referencing what, and everything will be like running in all these nodes. So it's just like a fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like Taproot Wizards, here it is, we're 2023, going back 10 years to the original wizard and referencing that, 10 years later, whatever it is. Now with recursive inscriptions, that will really be the case, that people could be referencing, whether it's your Infinite AI, whether it's Taproot Wizards, whether it's your Unwell collection or your own or someone else's, same thing could be happening in 10 years. So we'll see what other things that you can do with there's recursive inscriptions, whether it's Taproot Wizards or something else. Before we go, I did want to let you briefly kind of talk about your Unwell collection. Describe that, because it's really weird, but it's cool. Like at some of these images, I think, wow, that's amazing, and then I see other ones, I'm like, this is really almost disturbing because it's like alive, but it's not. But it's technology, but it's biological. Like, yeah, describe that, your Unwell collection.
So as part of my work, I'm very interested in the technology, and I tend to use I come from a very also conceptualism, so I tend to use like available tools to create art or design, right? So I like to use out of the box things. So the same way that I did for when I was working for Infinite AI, I use Water.js, which is like basically out of the box water simulation from 3ds. For the Unbelt, what I was doing is I was experimenting with the Midjourney, the Midjourney, the version that I had, which is like by the time a little bit earlier than when I did the Unbelt, because then inscribe it. I think the Unbelt, I finished it like a month before I inscribed them. So I had like the version, whatever version, available version. So the idea was to, thinking about proof of work and computation in general. Like even AI use like a lot of GPUs and this technical hardware, right? So thinking about the inspiration was to thinking about this technological species and thinking about also the bottom of the ocean. Like we don't know what's going on in the deep ocean, right? Like there's like creatures or aliens, like I would say, right? So I was thinking about it, and then I was like, okay, let's do like a just Midjourney straight out, get like these computer devices mixing with the deep ocean creatures and see what they do, what Midjourney does, right? And it's very interesting because luckily we have Ordinals now, so now we can track down which version of Midjourney I use. I'm very sure like if I put the same prompt right now with a new version of Midjourney is gonna come out with something completely different, and I thought that was very interesting. So this collection is around the 45,000. So I thought when I inscribed it, I was in 1 year or at the end of the year, there's gonna be a million of inscriptions, and this is gonna sit in the very bottom, right? So in the future, I'm gonna make an evolution of them. Okay, now we have 20 million inscriptions, and this is sitting in the very bottom. So yeah, my idea is to find build a narrative around it, they evolve into something else, and it's always gonna represent the time where we are, So those are that's my idea, is to have these alive creatures that they are living in the blockchain.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And I love the deep sea. I love deep sea animals. I'm really interested in that, how they evolved over time. And like you said, it's still a great mystery, what's going on under there. And so when you combine that with Midjourney and machinery, I think it's really interesting. So yeah, I definitely recommend people check that out as well. It's Umwelt. So UMWELT, Umwelt. So now that we're closing down, I have one final question that I like to ask all of my guests, Far, which is, do you have an inscription or multiple inscriptions that you would never sell, that you would never transfer? And if you do, what are they and why?
Interesting question. I have one of the somewhat generative art that I inscribed early on. And I think, of course, some of these belts, I'm gonna keep them. I mean, right now I have a lot of them. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. If I own, of course, I own my wizard. I don't think my wizard is gonna go anywhere. And then I try to collect around things that I like, and then I'm gonna keep them forever. And maybe I give them to my daughters. There's this culture of it's kind of like a Bitcoin culture too, right? When my daughters were born, I got them some Bitcoin, so you keep them. It's this culture about keeping these artifacts, right? So yeah, I have a few that I want to, that they are not going anywhere. Hold on.
That's good to hear. And you have daughters, and so it means something more if you're not just keeping them for yourself, but if you're keeping them for your family. So it's different. As you think about it. And I love what you said about you also, got her some Bitcoin when she was bored. And so you're thinking long term, and maybe not a lot of people will buy ETH for, their daughter when they're born. Maybe they do, but definitely it's a lot more common in Bitcoin. So Far, this has been a great conversation. I really like your grounding in Bitcoin and, in technology. And I knew you'd be doing some interesting things. So I wanted to give our listeners, background on obviously Taproot Wizards, but also the other stuff that you're doing. And I like your technical background. So where can people find you on Twitter, social media, and then all of your work?
So yeah, in social media, on Twitter, I go by 0x Far, and that's the same than in my Instagram. And actually, my website is that 0xfar.com. I try to put everything on brand, so it's not complicated. So you can find everything over there. I have in my Twitter bio, I have a link tree. So there is all the projects that I have. I try to keep everything on a link over there.
Okay, 0x Far is easy to find you. Well, again, Far, thanks again for coming on the Ordinals Podcast.
Thank you for having me here. This has been great, a great conversation.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please rate and review our show. Subscribe to the Ordinals Podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite app, and follow us on Twitter @theordpod. Drop us a line at podcast@ord.media for topics you'd like us to cover or guests you'd like us to interview. Ordinals 2024 conference is taking place in Nashville. Early bird passes are available now. Visit ord.media and sign up for our newsletter. Thanks for listening to the Ordinals Podcast, produced by Ord Media.